How good does it feel making embellishments with our scraps, using your offcuts for decoration and making snippet rolls like this? In this week's video I'm making easy stuffed pockets, sharing beginner tips for sewing and taking you through it step by step. I've made a few already, they're super fun to make. They have little pockets at the front here and plenty of space behind, space to fill with tags and other sumptuous paper goodies. And if using up your scraps and playing with paper makes you happy, then hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. I've got lots more papery goodness ideas to share in the weeks ahead. I've finished this with a handmade tag, it just seemed to finish it off. And in the process of making all of these, I've used up lots of my pieces of paper, and that made me feel really good about tidying up in my craft room. One of the easiest and most fun ways I've found of using up my scraps is making these little simple snippet rolls, and they are useful for decorating on the front of the pocket, like here. I'll show you how to make them later in the video. I've made use of all of these offcuts, all of these little bits of snippets of paper that fill your craft room if you don't do something with them. So grab your bags of scraps and all those little pieces of paper. Let's make simple stuffed pockets. All you need to get started is a book page like this or a similar piece of paper, and this one is large enough to allow us to get 2 stuffed pockets from it, so pretty efficient in the use of the paper. It's glossy paper that comes from this book, and although I like the images in it, it's the glossy, robust nature of the paper that allows us to get a really good pocket that we can stuff with lots of goodies. And in addition to that, we'll just need a pair of scissors, a ruler, a little bit of measuring, a pencil and some glue, and I'm using both a stick and a little bottle of glue there, and that will be used in a couple of different ways, both to put the pocket together and then to glue on the decoration, which includes this simple snippet roll. And I'll show you later on how I've been using my sewing machine just to put that together, which was a huge amount of fun. You can fill your stuffed pocket with pretty much anything you like. I like to choose from my range of tags that I've been making recently, and also some of my little stationery pieces. So these are some of the gorgeous little notebooks that come in the Your Creative Studio box that I've been very grateful to receive. So it really is a great way of using up all of those lovely pieces of ephemera that you've been making and perhaps don't really know how to use, and also your mid-size pieces of paper. So I've been gathering a few of my little pieces of scrapbook paper, and I'll be choosing from these to decorate the pocket, and I'll show you how I use a little punch on them as well to make the front of the pocket just a little bit more decorative and maybe a little bit different from some of the ones I've made before. If you have any little sequins like these, they're great for decorating the front of that little handmade tag, just to look like a hole that's been punched or a brad. And here's the punch that I'll be using, and of course my corner rounder on the top of the pockets. So let's get on and just tear up that paper, tear up that book page to make the kind of size of piece of paper that's great for this really easy stuffed pocket. I'm using a bone folder on the crease there just to make it sharp and easy to tear, and this gives me a rectangle that will be perfect for this pocket. It doesn't really matter what the pictures are on this because we're going to decorate it, or it will be on the back of the pocket. I just want to make one of the sides into a flap, so I am folding that right hand side and creasing it down really sharply, and then tidily bringing over the left hand side so that we have this little rectangle. And at this point, if you do want rounded corners, and I like to have them on this pocket just at the top, I'm going to get my little corner rounder and punch at the 2 top corners. It's up to you if you want to do this, you don't have to, but I just like the effect at the end, and it's the right time to do it if you do want rounded corners. The next bit of cutting and folding we're doing is to make the front pocket, which is a little bit more like a tuck spot, and I want to tear down this left hand side. I want to tear only about half of the length of the pocket, so I'm making a mark just a little bit beyond the halfway point, and if your paper is well creased, you can carefully tear it up, or you might want to use a pair of scissors just to be sure. And this is the piece that will fold up like this. We'll make a double fold in a minute, and that will give us a robust little tuck spot, nice and neat on either side when we fold. Plenty of space to add some of our smaller pieces of ephemera. So from that first fold, we're going to fold up, but I don't want to fold all the way. I don't want to create a difficulty when we create that second fold up. So leave a little space just here when you make that second fold, and that will make it easier when we glue the second time and bring that little tuck spot, that little front pocket into place. So at this point you can stick down that flap, and what we're doing here is really just using all of the paper to make a robust front tuck spot. I'm going to glue this flap down onto the lower piece of paper at the back, leaving the upper part here loose to create the back pocket. So I'm just creating a mark on the flap with a pencil at a point where when I cut it, it means the upper flap won't be visible behind this front fold. So I'm just taking my scissors and making a little snip just here. Careful not to go too far into the paper, and this gives me an upper flap that will be loose and a bottom flap that we're going to glue down. And all together now we have the structure of the stuffed pocket. Using my glue stick to glue down that lower flap, and you can see there the upper flap is loose. And now it's time to have some fun decorating this bottom portion of the pocket. And this is where I think it's a great opportunity to use up some of your medium pieces of patterned and scrapbook papers. So I'm just pulling out from a collection I have in a basket on my desk some lovely pattern papers. They don't even need to be the right size. I quite like the effect you see here with a bit of type, a bit of font behind the paper. I like this little piece of Anna Griffin paper, and I think what goes with that is a contrast piece. So this lovely striped piece. I like to have the heavier weight colour at the bottom of a piece of paper. There's just something I have as a preference there. But really just use whatever pieces of paper you have, whatever you feel like. Combine some interesting patterns and colours. Just do whatever makes you happy. I'm using this punch just to add a bit of interest to the edge of one of those little pieces of scrapbook paper. It's one of those tools in my craft room that just hasn't had enough love, so I thought in 2020 I would make the most of some of my craft supplies and pull out and use some of the things that haven't had enough use. Do you find that there are little tools, some paper pads that hide at the back of your cupboards and don't get use? Pull them out, let's have some fun, let's use up what we've got and make the most of our craft supplies. So here I'm covering up the lower portion of the pocket, just sticking that pretty piece of pattern paper on the bottom half, using my glue stick again. So covering up this bottom area, including the flap that we stuck down. And I'm just going to glue it on and then trim it down from the back afterwards rather than cutting it to size before. And this way I don't make the mistake of cutting a piece of paper that's just a little bit too small or smaller than I wanted. And those pieces that come off will be kept. They all go into a little basket and they get used in lots of other ways, including making the snippets. The punched piece here will go just above that lower pattern piece, overlapping so that I just see a little piece of that flowery paper below peeping through the punched holes. So again, I'm gluing that on with my glue stick rather than the more watery glue, and that helps keep the pocket itself nice and flat. And trimming off from the back so that we have some very clean edges. And now we can glue down the upper pocket, so the front pocket, which means a little bit of glue on the flap that we retained, pressing that down and finishing off with glue either side here, just enough to make that flap stick, but leaving enough of a gap that we can tuck in some lovely little tags and pieces of paper to journal on. It would be great to know if you're enjoying this video, this pocket making process. give me a thumbs up if you are, and hit the subscribe button if you're interested in seeing more similar videos on making pockets, envelopes and journals, which is what I do on my channel here. I'm decorating the front of the pocket with this really simple snippet roll, and forgive me for how simple it is. I wanted to use up my pieces of paper, all of those scraps, but I'm really a complete beginner when it comes to sewing. I'm absolutely loving using my new sewing machine, and if you like sewing on paper, then drop me a comment down below and tell me why you love it. So I'm using up all these little pieces that amass when you cut things up and you fold and play with paper. I'm even using little bits of text like this from books. I just thought I'd invite you into my craft room, show you my new little sewing machine and share with you how I make them. So this is the little baby that I've got. It's from Hobbycraft. It cost me about £40. That had £10 off. And Hobbycraft is a craft store here in the UK. What I've been doing is sorting out some of those strips of paper into narrow ones which will go on top of the snippet roll and slightly wider ones which go underneath. And all I do is put a couple of them together. I've got any coloured thread in there, and with just a straight running stitch, one of the 10 or so that I have a choice from on this sewing machine, I'm literally just running them through, taking it slowly and gently and trying to go as straight as possible. When I reach the end of one of those pieces of paper, I just feed a new piece, a new strip of paper through, overlapping slightly just here so that the two pieces of paper come together, and then carrying on. And it really does build up incredibly quickly. And I know it's very simple, but when I come to use this on the front of the pocket, it does add just a bit of interest for the eye and also some texture from the thread that you see on the front of that strip. When I do have a piece of pattern paper, I will try to coordinate where possible. As you can see here, bringing together some of the green with the green in that flower. But there really isn't a science. I don't take it slowly. I just go for it and have some fun. So if you sew on paper, and lots of you have told me that you do, then please do share any of your tips, your thoughts, your ideas, your favourite projects for sewing on paper. Drop a comment down below and I would love to read those and learn from you guys. I am a complete beginner, but I'm just enjoying the journey and I just wanted to share that with you today. So here I'm using a piece of finished snippet roll on the front of the pocket, and I'm gluing it down with a more watery glue just to get a bit more coverage. Pressing it down, and I'm using a piece of snippet where I've actually blended into the strip a piece of text that I've cut out of one of my books. I've actually been making lots of other pockets. I got rather obsessed at my desk. Some of them I've decorated with my 5-petal flowers, and here's a new design that I thought I might share with you in a future video. If you're interested in seeing these, again using up your scraps, making really easy 5-petal flowers, then drop me a comment down below and I can film a video on that. Now I'm filling the pocket with some lovely pieces of vintage paper, so scraps that are left behind when I make some of my junk journals and decorate them. And I've been inspired recently by a couple of other channels to use up some of my scraps. So that's Shabbydabbydoodah here on YouTube. Do check out Tina's channel, and I'll leave a link to her channel in the description box down below. She has a great series on making ephemera en masse and using up your scraps, and also the beautiful items made by Amity Bloom on her channel by Nazi. So check out those channels if you want to be inspired to use up your scraps. And here you can see how I'm using up some of my little pieces of ephemera and scrap pieces of paper, just gradually choosing from what's around on my desk, this little bit of ephemera, some tickets I think from Your Creative Studio again. I'm choosing colours that tend to blend with some of the pattern paper, but also just pulling on some of the items that I've just so much enjoyed creating in the last couple of weeks. The pocket that we've made today does have some capacity for stuffing at the back, and that was the intention in this design. It's the flap that allows you to put quite a few items in it, so I'm taking full advantage of that. playing with my pieces of stationery here, and those will be great for putting into that pocket and using for making lists. And you could add this to a page of your journal, or you could give it as a little present to someone who's equally obsessed with paper and journaling. The tag here I've actually aged using chalks rather than inks. I have those, so that's what I've used. So I'm just tucking that larger one into the back pocket and searching for any other items that I can use up from my rather disparate range of supplies. These are tags that I've made over the last year or two now, I believe. So picking from what I have, creating a rather eclectic mix of items, which is how I like it, to stuff into this little stuffed pocket. I'm adding a tag to the front of the pocket like this, just handwriting on it and putting some faux stitching around it. And as I look at it now, it just reminds me of those miniature bottles from Alice in Wonderland when she finds them down the rabbit hole and drinks from them. It's a teeny tiny tag, easy to make, and I've used some vintage music paper for this one. If you like making pockets and envelopes, then check out my playlist. I'll leave a link to it in the description box down below. And do let me know if you make one of these. I would love to know how you get on, how you use up your scraps, and what sort of ephemera you put into the pockets at the front and the back. Hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss my next video, and I really look forward to seeing you soon.